I just launched the Delay to Daily Action course on October 24th, and it was 50% off for the very first students. So many have since messaged that they missed that offer, and I get it. Life happens, and that has happened to me before. That is why I have decided to extend it for a few more days at 25% off. The Delay to Daily Action course is a 12-week transformation program that helps you beat procrastination, perfectionism, and self-doubt. The 3 biggest dream killers. If you've been waiting for the perfect time, this is it. Start with just 20 minutes a day and build unstoppable momentum toward your goals. Don't delay your dreams again. Grab your 25% off while offer lasts until November 7th. Today's guest has a remarkable career that spans over 4 decades in journalism, including serving as a White House correspondent and spending 7 years as one of Wolf Blitzer's editors at CNN. Now he's transitioned into the world of fiction, bringing the same sharp eye for detail and storytelling into his novels. He's also a manuscript editor, helping writers refine their craft, and believes deeply in the power of writing as a way to heal. From covering breaking news to coaching new authors, his journey shows us what it really takes to go from novice to novelist. Stay tuned to be motivated and inspired. Welcome to the Minute Mastery Podcast, a conversational productivity and time management podcast where busy authors and entrepreneurs are inspired to create time for what truly matters. I'm your host, Ngozi Edema. I'm a time management coach, writer, and entrepreneur. Here, you are encouraged to turn your minutes into milestones and to create at least 1 hour a day working on your goals without feeling overwhelmed. And while you are here, I thought I'd let you know of a storybook to gift your favorite little kids, Mama's Daycare. In Mama's Daycare, Nene has always been by her mama's side, helping, chatting, filling her days with laughter. But now, with school just around the corner, Nene worries, how will Mama cope? Determined to help, Nene comes up with a series of fun and imaginative ideas to help keep Mama busy while she is away at school, full of heart, humor, and colorful illustrations. This sweet story captures the special bond between a mother and her child, and the big emotions that come with growing up. Perfect for beginner readers. Mama's Daycare is a gentle, charming read that will make kids giggle, think, and maybe even create their own plans for the people they love most. So grab your copy today. You can find the link to this book in this episode show notes to order your copy today. My guest today is John DeDakis, a former White House correspondent and senior editor for CNN's The Situation Room with Wolf Blitzer. After 45 years in journalism, John made the leap into fiction writing and now helps authors as a coach and manuscript editor. He's passionate about showing how writing can be both a craft and a way to heal. So welcome to the Minute Mastery, John. I'm sorry for messing up your last name.
Well, you wouldn't be the first. Thanks, Ngozi.
Thank you for coming to the Minute Mastery. You spent 45 years in journalism, including time as a White House correspondent and years editing for John Blitzer at CNN. That's amazing. Now, looking back, how has journalism evolved? And are there parts of that evolution that concern you?
Well, it's journalism has changed a lot in the 45 years I was in, and even since I left CNN in 2013. Journalism has changed technologically, for one. I mean, it's just faster to get the news. In fact, it can be instant now. It's also changed in that the internet has made it possible for people to get their information from all kinds of sources. And that has caused a lot of newspapers to go out of business. It has made it more difficult for there to be trusted sources of news because there is just so much information out there. But there is still, I think, the core value of what journalism is all about, and that is an attempt to fairly and accurately report the news, whatever it is that's important to know in a society, whether it's bad things that happen, accidents, things like that, wars, elections, all those kinds of things, and governing, holding powerful people accountable so that their governance is looked at critically and constructively. So I think that the basic elements of journalism are still there, but I think that there's just so much more noise now, so much more competition, so many competing voices that I think people are overwhelmed and discouraged and doubtful and, quite frankly, apathetic now. And that for the most part, I think people have tuned out and they have just been content to either go about their lives and forget about the news, or they go into their own silo or in their own cocoon, their own echo chamber to have their opinions reinforced. So things have changed a lot.
Okay. So it's not every time we find someone who has worked with some famous people on television. As a side question, what was it like working with Wolf Blitzer?
Well, Wolf Blitzer is a journalist's journalist. I worked with him for 7 years, and to be honest, I still don't know what his politics are. I wouldn't be a bit surprised if he doesn't vote, because I think he wants to keep his objectivity as pure as possible. If anything, my experience of him is that he cares more than anything about accuracy and fairness. And he's also very funny.
He's also very funny. Okay.
Yeah, sure. Okay.
And what did your experience working as a journalist teach you about clarity, precision in storytelling?
That's a really good question. And journalism, by definition, needs to be clear. You need to really understand what the facts are, what the issues are, what the meaning is. And because you only have so much time, or in newspapers, so much space, you have to be efficient in the way you communicate. So, that was a great way to come up and to be taught how to write and to write effectively.
So how did you make the transition from journalism to novel writing? They are both writing, definitely.
Well, it was a gradual transition because, I mean, originally I was going to go into politics and go into law. My dad was a lawyer, and so we were going to be partners, and then I'd go into politics. But I made the transition to journalism primarily during the Vietnam War and Watergate. I became a little bit, for lack of a better word, cynical about politics. And I felt journalism was a better place to sit to try to figure out what the facts were. And so for the longest time, I was a reporter and I was doing just the facts reporting. And it wasn't until probably the early to mid 90s when CNN made me an editor that I needed a creative outlet, because editing was tedious. It was fault finding. It wasn't creative. And so I began to teach myself how to write fiction. And it took a long time because I had to give myself permission to make things up. And so it took, from the beginning to when I got my first novel published, it took 10 years. My novel went through 14 major revisions, and my agent is the 39th agent that I queried. So I tell my writing students, if you take good notes, I'll save you 9 years in the process.
Okay. So you went from writing facts, factual information, to writing fiction, which is kind of made up.
That's right.
Did you find that challenging? I know you've talked about it briefly. Did you see freedom in that?
It was challenging at first because it really, you really, as a journalist, are stuck to the facts. You don't get to make things up. Unlike what some presidents will tell you, it is a firing offense to make things up at a reputable news organization. And so it took me a while to give myself the freedom to, go a little bit beyond the facts, because I still drew from personal experience, but I had the freedom then to change some of the facts in order to make the fictional story, more interesting. And that was tremendously freeing. And I think it helped me get to know myself a little bit better too, because I think a lot of writing comes from within, usually from a deep place that you're not even consciously aware of.
Thank you. So let's step away from journalism a little bit and let's go into something else. You talk about writing as a way to heal. I also see writing as an outlet to calm me down and heal me from different things. Can you share how storytelling has been personally meaningful to you in this way?
Thank you for the opportunity to tell that story, because when I first started writing fiction, I just wanted to get a book published. I had no idea what my genre was. I didn't even really know what my story was, but I started writing, and I started writing from a place of personal experience. When I was doing writing exercises at the very beginning of the process, one of the writing exercises was to write about a personal experience. And as a 9-year-old boy, I witnessed a car train collision that killed 3 people. And this talks about the spooky power of the subconscious. A week after that accident, I heard a report on the radio about a car train collision in which an infant survived. And I began to play what if that kid had grown up and wanted to find out more about her past. And so that's what I was thinking about as I was doing this writing exercise. And so that car train collision I witnessed became the impetus for the very first novel that I wrote. In addition, and of course, witnessing something like that is very traumatic, but I also plucked from my personal experience my sister's suicide. She died of carbon monoxide poisoning. I was on the scene that day. And so the very first chapter of the first book, Fast Track, takes those 2 stories and puts them together to create a mystery. And so I was drawing from personal experience. So now 20 years in the future, I've written 6 mystery suspense thriller novels. And because grief and loss are part of my protagonist's life, that informs the other stories going forward. Well, anyone who has been alive has experienced grief and loss. And it doesn't necessarily have to be the loss of a loved one or it could be a loss of a pet, a job, a friendship, your health, your innocence. And so I baked that experience of loss and grief into my character as the stories went forward, to the point where when my 4th novel came out, Bullet in the Chamber, I was accessing events that happened around the death of my youngest son of a heroin overdose in 2011. So I look back now and I can see that the entire writing process for me has been therapeutic. It's been cathartic, being able to get those emotions into the story. And it's been therapeutic because I've been able to examine my feelings, the experiences, and basically to know myself better, consequently making my character more authentic.
Wow, you've gone through a lot.
Yeah.
Yeah, I feel for you. I hope you're getting support for all of this.
I got support and I have support. So thank you.
Yeah. So as an editor, but before I ask my next question, because based on what you said earlier on, I'm going to ask for a piece of advice from you to listeners who are trying to write a book later on. But one of the things I want to find out from you, do you think our personal experience influence what we write? Book.
Yeah, definitely. I definitely think it does. I think that the act of writing, stirs things up that are in your subconscious, and it comes through your fingers and onto the page like sipping. It's like writing is like sipping from your subconscious onto the page.
Thank you, because every stage of my life, I've created imaginary characters in my head that I communicate with my characters. I talk to them like real people.
Yeah. Good for you.
The problem is, I'm not going to write about all those stories I have in my head. But the thing is, many of those characters I created in my head are based off of my experiences in life.
Exactly.
Either good or bad. It could be maybe family. I want a particular situation in life, but I get something opposite. I create characters in my head to depict the kind of life I would have preferred.
Right. Yeah.
I also sometimes create characters about the opposing side just to tell me what I should not be.
Right. And one of the things I suggest to my students is to do an interview with your characters, especially your villain, because you don't want to create a villain who's perfectly evil. Because, think of the villains in your own life. Chances are they put forward their best foot. You may have married them. And so you want to build redeeming qualities into your villain as well.
Yeah. Yes. I've done that too. I've tried to do redeeming stuff. I imagine a specific character and I wish they could turn around and do something else. So I've created those type of imaginative characters and I'm hopeful that my character will change.
Aren't we all?
We all, yeah. And it's just that inner feeling among us humans. We always want the good to conquer the evil.
Yes.
And that is why in most books, especially children's book, we always hear the phrase, and they lived happily ever after. There's this utopia that we always want to create, that things will always turn out well.
I mean, I'm an optimist. But we know we're realists too. Life doesn't always turn out well.
It doesn't always turn out well. Yeah. The real life is that, in fact, these days, most things don't turn out well. So, well, it is what it is. Yeah. So as an editor, what are the most common mistakes you see writers make in their manuscripts, and how can they avoid them?
Probably the biggest mistake I see is that writers tend to front load backstory into their story. You need to get the story started, get two people talking, have something happen. We don't need to know everything that happened to them up until this point. You can take those bits of information and sprinkle them in as the story goes on, but have a good story, get it started so that the reader can experience it without you throwing all kinds of facts at them and telling the story instead of showing the story. That's probably the biggest problem I come across.
Yeah. It's a skill to show and not to tell.
Once you get the hang of it, it's possible, but we do tend to tell stories. And I think I highly recommend writing classes, writing workshops, writing conferences as a way to better understand how to show rather than tell.
Thank you. So social media and AI are reshaping the way stories are told and consumed.
Yes.
So do you see them as tools, distractions, or potential threats for writers? All of the above.
All of the above. Look, social media and AI are morally neutral and they're here to stay. But the problem is what people do with them. And that's a problem. But in and of themselves, I don't see a problem. I think that they can be agents for good. I think that it's a possible way to connect. You and I are connected over the internet. So, I think that there's a lot of good that is part of the internet. Social media can be a bad place in terms of bullying, in terms of falsehoods that are sent out. Artificial intelligence can be a good thing if you're looking for a way to say something succinctly and clearly. It can be a good source of research, especially if you make sure you get the sources of, where they're getting that. It can also be a problem in terms of, there's one instance I'm aware of where a very impressionable person, a suicidal person, used AI as a therapist. And basically the therapist taught the kid how to write a suicide note and then take his life, because it's just trying to please you and give you what you want. It also is a major suck on the environment in terms of using energy. There are these vast data centers that have to be built in order to handle the influx of requests for information. And that's just taking a lot of energy to produce. And finally, I think that it can be used nefariously to create deep fakes, things that look real but aren't. And that can be used to mislead an entire population. So I think we're at a point where a person needs to be very discerning about their use of social media, especially when it comes to consuming news and in terms of consuming pictures, because pictures are often more powerful than words, and yet they can be faked. Yeah. And I think that we need to be aware that people are trying to manipulate us into believing something that's not true.
Thank you. I read that sad story about the teenager who took his life because he was communicating with AI, and it's sad. It shows that I had a podcast episode. The conversation was around it, that humans have to guide the conversation when it comes to the use of AI.
Yes.
We cannot allow AI to call the shots. Right. We have to be the one taking the lead in deciding how AI should be used ethically.
Yes.
So it's good to keep that in mind.
Absolutely.
So, for someone listening who feels they have a story inside them, but they don't know where to begin, what is the first step you recommend, you encourage them to take?
There are a couple of things you can do. And I think because I'm suggesting a couple of things, that should help, because there's no one right way or wrong way to do it. Usually a person, at least in my experience, the conversations I have with people, there's at least one story in there that wants to come out. And then it's a matter of asking yourself, do I really want to put in the hard work that it's going to take to do this? If the answer is yes, then keep going, because you know it's going to be hard. If you know it's going to be hard and you don't really feel that strongly about it, don't worry about it. Tell your friends the story and, do it over coffee or do it more informally. If you're really serious, though, about writing, one suggestion is to start doing writing exercises so that you get a better understanding of who your characters are and what your story is. Because I think all too often people will get an idea, they'll be very excited about it, they'll write for maybe 50 pages, and then they'll hit the wall and get discouraged because they realize that they're overwhelmed. There's too much that they hadn't thought through. And so they quit and get discouraged. And so if you put the time in to do the spade work, the preparation, then when it's time to write, you'll have a better idea of the roadmap ahead so that you'll more easily be able to do it. And then the third thing is write. Just write.
Thank you. I think that's it's a basic advice.
Very practical, very practical.
Yeah. Thank you very much. So where can listeners find you to connect with you, and what do they hope to get if they connect with you?
Well, you can get a hold of me through my website, and it's DeDakis.com, and I'll go back to that in a minute. But if you go to my website, there'll be a page that talks about all 6 novels that I've written, a brief thumbnail that describes what the books are about. There's a page that has my upcoming events. I do a lot of manuscript teaching or writing teaching online. So at my upcoming events page, you can see the writing conferences I'll be at, the classes that I'll be teaching, and so on. I have a page devoted to my podcast. I interview people, and I'm also interviewed a lot. So this interview will be up on my website. I'm also expanding my speaking so that I'm not just talking to the writing community, but I'm talking to corporations that have wellness programs. I'm talking to hospitals. I'm talking to grief recovery groups, veterans groups, to help them use writing as a way to heal. So I'm just trying to take my message as far as I can. And I'm also a manuscript editor and a one-on-one writing coach. And all of those aspects of what I do is on my website. And in addition, you can get through to me by email through my website, which is my name, JohnDeDakis.com. And I'll spell that. It's because it's Greek. It's JOHN. D as in dog E, D as in dog A, KIS as in Sam. JohnDeDakis.com.
Thank you very much,
Thank
John,
you.
for coming to the show. Thank you for joining us here, and it's quite inspiring to listen to you.
Thank you very much, Ngozi.
What a great conversation with John DeDakis, from his decades in journalism to his journey as a novelist and coach. He has shown us that storytelling isn't just about headlines or plots. It's about finding meaning, healing, and having the courage to begin. Just start, he recommended. So if you've been sitting on a story, I hope this episode gives you the nudge to get it out there into the world. Thanks for tuning in to the Minute Mastery Podcast. If you found this episode helpful, please share it to someone who could use more time in their day. And remember to subscribe and leave us a review. Until next time, you are in control of your time and you've got this.